Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Six Bridges Book Festival. My name is Felicia Hobbs, and I will serve as the moderator for this session with Vashti Harrison. Thanks so very much for participating and being a part of this session. Now, let me take this time to share a brief bio about Vashti Harrison. Vashti Harrison is a New York Times best-selling creator of Little Leaders and Little Dreamers and Little Legends, and the illustrator of Lupita Nyong'o's Sulwe and Matthew Cherry's Hair Love, among others. She earned her BA in Studio Art and Media Studies from the University of Virginia and her MFA in Film Video from Cal Arts, where she rekindled a love for drawing and painting. Vashti lives in Brooklyn, New York, and invites you to visit her at vashtiharrison.com or on Instagram or Twitter at Vashti Harrison. Now, let me take care of one housekeeping chore. There will be a specific time for questions and answers, and we will alert you to that time. Now, Vashti Harrison.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Felicia, for that introduction. I'm really happy to be able to spend some time with you guys today at the Six Bridges Book Festival, talk a little bit about my books and my work. So I'm going to do a quick presentation and then afterwards do a little drawing demo. So I'm happy to answer any questions, so you can put those in the Q&A part of your Zoom screen. And then we'll get started. Does that sound good? Okay. Yes. So I'd love to start the presentation. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. Cool. And after the presentation, then I'll switch over and you guys can see how it works when I draw straight on the screen. So if it looks like I'm looking not at the camera, it's because my screen is way down here. But thank you so much for having me. Today I'm going to share a little bit about who I am. So my name is Vashti Harrison. I'm an author and an illustrator and a filmmaker. All that really means is I just love telling stories. I love mixing those stories together with images. So sometimes I'll come up with an idea and think, wow, that would make a really great book. Sometimes I'll come up with an idea and think that'll make a really great short film or animation or illustration or a photograph. I'm really just interested in learning different media and different tools to be able to share stories in the best way possible. And these days, what I'm most excited about is sharing stories for young people through books and other things. So if we can go to some of the next slide. Okay, we can keep going. All right, so my story starts with this girl. This is me as like a second and third grader doing my favorite thing and my least favorite thing. I've always loved drawing, never liked taking pictures. So you can see the great grimace I have going on there. I was that kid who loved kind of just finding a quiet corner with my sketchbook and just drawing quietly. When I was little, that mostly involved me looking at my favorite cartoons on the TV and copying them. And then as I got older, it mostly involved me flipping through magazines and copying fashion outfits and models. And then as I got even older, it involved me learning how to make movies and write my own stories and create my own characters. So in the next slide, we'll see a couple of examples of my illustrations. I really am inspired by my childhood a lot. You can see I love drawing kids in nature. In the next slide, we'll see a few more. I love drawing kids going on adventures, doing things that I may not have the confidence to do or never have the opportunity to do, like fly on a spaceship or travel through the stars. I love using illustration to be able to make worlds that feel magical and whimsical and wonderful for the little kid version of me that probably would have been really inspired to see that. So I want to show you a couple examples, an example of how I do my work. So this is a video. So if we press play, you can see how it all goes down. So I start off really sketchy as I'm putting down a ton of lines just to find the figure. Then I go in with the color and the lighting, because for me, that's what tells the story. I'm really just trying to capture a moment that feels, magical and celebratory. But watch how many times I draw her legs here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times, because I'm just still figuring it out as I go. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to capture a moment in the best way possible. And when I'm doing that for books, it's really just to try to get kids, pull them into the scene, pull them into the story, make them want to turn the page and keep reading. But I know that can seem a little bit like wild and crazy. Like, I have no idea how you do that. And people are always asking me, where do you get your ideas? Like it's some crazy magical experience. But I want to show you in the next video. I don't want to press play just yet. If we go to the next one, it's my example of how sometimes ideas can come from anywhere. There we go. So don't press play just yet on that one. I'm sure you can probably see that this is an apple. This was from one day I was working and I took a snack break and I got myself an apple and I ate half of it and I left the other half sitting on my desk. And as I looked at it a little bit later, I thought, you know what, that kind of reminds me of something. So I snapped a photo of it with my iPad and I started drawing on top of it. Maybe you'll be able to see what I saw. So now we can press play and see it take shape. Okay, so that's my very silly example. You guys might recognize this guy. It's Mike Wazowski from Monsters Incorporated. So when I tell people ideas can come from anywhere, I really mean anywhere. You just have to be open to seeing it. And I always tell kids, it's almost the same thing as looking up at the clouds and finding the shapes and the figures and characters. I just try to do that all the time in my work. Be open to that creativity coming and finding you anywhere you go. And in order to make creative work, you have to, force yourself to be open to those kinds of things. So I'm really lucky that I get to do this for my job. I'm going to show you some photos of the books that I work on. So I write and illustrate my own books, so Little Leaders, Bold Women in Black History, Little Dreamers, Visionary Women Around the World, and Little Legends, Exceptional Men in Black History. So these are all books that I've written and illustrated, and in this case, I write all of the words and I draw all of the pictures. And these books are all nonfiction, so I do all the research and kind of compile all of that information down into these kind of bite-sized pieces for young readers. But other times I illustrate other people's books. So here are a couple of examples of those. And a few more. So what happens in these books, in this case, we can go to the next slide. The writer writes all of the words, and then it's my job to turn that story into something visual. I think about it a lot like making a movie. So if we think of maybe the writer as the screenwriter and maybe the editor as the director, I kind of think of myself as the person who's all on the other side. So I'm casting the characters, so I design the characters. I'm designing their costumes. What are they wearing? I'm building the sets. I'm trying to figure out what their spaces and their worlds look like. I'm also the camera person. I'm deciding how are we going to look at this scene and how are we going to show it from whose perspective. And I'm also doing all the lighting and the gaffing and the gripping as well, I suppose. But when we say movie magic, it's really transforming all of these different elements and different pieces into something that feels real and sucks you in. And that's all I want to do for young readers, is make these stories come alive. So, I'm so happy and so lucky that I get to do this now. And I feel really lucky that I've gotten to work on projects that all focus on subjects that are important to me. But over the past couple of years, I've gotten really interested in a particular subject. It's kind of crazy to me that I am interested in outer space and stars and space missions, but the thing that I've been really obsessed with drawing recently are kids going on adventures through the stars. So here are a couple of examples of those pieces. You know, when I was a little kid, I was actually terrified of outer space. It's kind of a crazy joke that I love this now, but it's so exciting to me to be able to show the beauty in it, but also that perspective, because I really care about taking care of our planet. And, you know, one of the things that I often hear and have really like cued in on from astronauts is this perspective that they're offered when they travel to the stars, that they learn and can see this incredible special place we have in planet Earth. And so I love making work that allows us that perspective to remind us how special and lucky we are to have a planet, and that we should take care of it. So, you know, I was happy to be able to put all of that joy and excitement into this new book, Hello Star. So this book just came out earlier this week on Tuesday. And over the past couple of days, Stephanie Lucianovic and I have been talking to kids across the country, sharing our history, our stories, and the inspiration. And I keep saying that this is such like a really beautiful story, and it really is. It hit me in a different way when I read it, and I knew that I wanted to put a lot of care into the artwork. So I'm going to break down some of the thinking that I had when I started working on the project, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of the sketches that I did. But nothing is as good as the real thing, so I highly recommend checking out the final book, because I put a lot of work into it. But here's some behind the scenes. You know, when I read Hello Star for the first time, I knew I wanted it to feel kind of soft and sweet, while also still feeling really grounded in science and technology. It's not a fantasy story. It's much more grounded than that. So I knew I wanted to be able to find a mix of those elements through the art style. When you first start working on a book, there are so many steps, but it all starts with just doing these drawing explorations, thumbnails, little sketches, just trying to figure out who the character is and how you're going to show, how you're going to tell that story through visual elements. So here are a couple of examples of the early sketches that I did in pastel and also digitally on my iPad. A few more from the same scene, just trying to capture that wonder and feeling of the character. So I'm trying to think about how different media, pastel versus gouache versus acrylic versus watercolor, is going to share the feelings that I'm feeling when I'm reading the story. But really early on, I try to figure out two things. What does the character look like, and what will my color palette be? So in the next image, we'll see a kind of lineup. I kind of zeroed in on this character design really quickly. A couple of different things went into it, but I was, you know, really inspired by a friend of mine who had the most adorable kids photo that they shared, and I was just thinking about how great hair she had, and I was thinking about, you know, when you're going to show a scene of a kid looking up at the stars a lot, or in these dark scenes, how can you showcase that light is affecting them? And I mean, that's a really subtle thing. It's not like, you know, I didn't choose this one character because of their hair, but it helped me think about ways to show the way the star and the light was bouncing off of them. So, you know, once I figure out what the character is going to look like, I do start thinking about the color palette. I usually try to assign a particular color to a character and then let the world kind of build out from there. So I build a palette based on a single color that I associate with that character, and think about, you know, what are its complements and things like that. And then, you know, I try to start figuring out how best to showcase that character. What tools will I use to illustrate the book? Will I use marker? Will I use colored pencil? Any of these things. So here are a couple of examples of that. These are done in pastel and on the computer with kind of digital pastels. And then, once I do a lot of tests, but in the meantime, I'm also gathering reference materials for the things that need to be specific, like the moon and the galaxy and the supernova. So here are a couple of photos of those things. So I use a mixture of things. I use books that I already have. I go to the library. I use the internet. I watch movies. I try to get myself into the right mood for telling that story. And then I do sketches based on that reference. So here are a couple of more sketches. I worked in a lot of pastels. So here are a couple of pastels that I'd done, and also this metallic watercolor I thought would be really fun. But I was still not there yet, so I kept doing tests. I think the next ones we see are going to be some digital tests. So every other book I've done has been completely digital, in that I've illustrated the whole book, all of the sketches and all the color and all of the art on the computer in Photoshop, which is the app I'm going to be showing you later today. And what's really cool about that is you can zoom in really, really tight and get all of those details just right. And I knew that that would be great for this story, to get, things feeling really specific, but I still was hoping for a bit of softness. So I just did a bunch of other tests. Also, I had a little extra time when working on this book to try out different media. So I was really excited about the opportunity. So here I'm going to run through really quickly a couple of different options. So I did tests in pastel, on blue paper, and on brown paper. I think some digital ones in Photoshop is the next one. On the iPad. They're all subtly different, but I'm just trying to figure out which one feels right. And the next one is a video we can play, so you can get a sense of like, how does that actually work. So you see, I started off with a sketch and I lay down the color, the background colors really quickly. And then I like to use light to tell the story. So I often put the lighting in pretty early to kind of carve out like the central focus of each moment or each scene, and use that lighting to kind of carry your eye across the page. Still though, it wasn't quite right for me, so I did a few more tests. Finally, I landed on something I liked. The next one after this, yeah. So this one you can see it's subtle, but it's a lot softer. And what I figured out was how to mix media. So I did a base sketch in colored pencil, and then I colored on top of that in Photoshop. So the next image you'll see is my underdrawing done in colored pencil. It doesn't really matter what color you use because you're going to change it in the computer anyways, but I used a medium color so I wouldn't go too dark and too bright, too light. So I'm going to break down how that works in the next couple of slides. So here is an example. So this is the base sketch I do on paper, and then I scan that into the computer. Then I isolate the different shapes and color over them. Then I start adding in the background just to push everything forward. And then I start adding in the details and the shading. Then I finish up the character. And then I add the final touches. So a few more slides there. There's the character, and then the special light bits and sparkles. So yeah, nothing's as informative as actually seeing the drawing. So I'm going to share my screen and go into Photoshop and kind of break down how I might start off a sketch. But while I'm doing that, I would love for you guys to share any questions you have. And Felicia, you can come back and either read some out loud, or if you want to just chat with me while I'm doing this, if you have any questions. Let me share Photoshop. Can you see that, Felicia?
I can.
Great. So you should be able to see. Hello. Okay. So right now on the page I have kind of like a stick figure drawing. So I might start off like one of my thumbnail sketches when I'm just trying to figure out the scene, with little stick figure type people, just to tell myself like what's happening, where's the light coming from, where are we in space, is this a medium shot, is this a close up, things like that. So we're going to have the character kind of looking upwards, looking up with this kind of bright light shining down. And so if light moves in a circle, there are different planes of this character's face that are going to be hit by light, and the hand, which is much closer to the light, is going to be really bright, and there are going to be shadows, and it's going to look really special. So a little movie magic here. I already have that character sketched out.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I spent a little more time on this earlier this week when I did school visits for a bunch of kids. So, you know, I'm going to get to the fun part for you guys, which is the coloring in. So I put down a ton of lines, like in that drawing of the ballerina. I'm mostly trying to just get the idea and the shape down there, and then, you know, I kind of clean it up afterwards. So I kind of isolate my favorite lines. So I go back over it with a really clean line. So on its own, it's much thinner. I actually love all that sketchiness, so I always keep that around. And then I put my base colors in, or my local color. So the color of something without light on it. So I built a palette for this book, kind of with these muted colors that felt really kind of dreamy. So I usually, you know, each scene is different. It's going to be affected a little bit differently by light, but generally I try to use most of the same colors for everything across the board, even if it's you know, a bedroom versus like a lab or a college campus or something like that. So I put my local colors down, and then in order for anything to look sparkly or look bright, you need darkness. So I'm going to put a dark background down. And that's fine. I'm going to add a little bit more color. And then now I'm going to put in some shadows, so you can watch me do that in real time. So like I said, the light, maybe I'll start off with some light so you can see. The light's going to be up here shining down. I'm working with just a plain round brush with low opacity. I don't want to go too intense too quickly. So that light is shining towards this character. And so it's going to hit different planes of their face. So this part first. And the hair. On my Instagram, you can see I made a little video on how to draw hair last year at the beginning of the pandemic. So if you want a kind of more in-depth tutorial on how I draw hair, that's there for you. So I'm going to work on this, but before that, I want to show you, I also add in some shadows. So I'm thinking about this character as a three-dimensional person. So underneath their neck, there's not going to be a lot of light coming there, and anything kind of on this side, on the left side of the frame, is going to be in more shadow. So if there are questions while I'm doing this, I'm happy to answer them.
Vashti, I have a few questions I would like to pose of you. And that was I did actually see a question earlier that came across the screen,
Okay.
but it's not there now.
Okay.
And I did not write it down.
If you, we can just, if you asked a question, someone, you can put that right back in the Q&A and we'll get to it.
Maybe it'll come back. Maybe it will come back up. Okay, the first question is, Vashti, which one is more of a challenge, writing or illustrating?
They are different types of challenge because I think they use different parts of my brain, maybe.
Mhm.
But they are both storytelling for me. When I was little, I was really insecure about my writing. I mean, not even little, pretty much all the way up through college. I thought that I was a bad writer, and so I didn't want anyone to read my writing. But it was through taking my first film class, where I was being asked to write about movies, that I kind of realized I was able to get over my fear of being a bad writer when I realized I had something to say. And so that's what shifted my whole perspective about being a creator. Like when I was a young person, like I said, I did a lot of copying. I copied characters off of the TV. I copied people in magazines. Once I started making work and stories that were all my own and started writing my own opinions and things down, I kind of got less insecure about my writing because it wasn't about me. It was more about getting the idea across. So there are still challenges I have, still insecurities I have about my writing ability. So my first instinct is to say, well, writing's so much harder than illustrating, but they both pose their own unique challenges. But I think I could say that I can more easily spend hours of my day drawing and maybe only a few minutes of my day writing. But I really think that storytelling is the tool, is the thing, and that writing and illustrating are just different tools to achieve that story. So whenever I'm writing something, like I'm working on a script right now in my sketchbook, in my notebook, I'm doing little doodles that help me understand what the story is. So
Okay.
yeah.
You have a question from the audience,
Okay.
and it is, what inspired your illustration style?
Um, I recently saw on Twitter someone posted something that was like, your style comes from just drawing a lot. It comes from you figuring out how you like to draw things, and different ways that you find it to be informative and illustrative for the story that you're trying to tell. Um, I don't know what my style is. I think it's more easy for other people to see, but I've learned that I do like certain things. I like whimsical, I like sweet, I like innocent. And those are very pointed things, like specific things I'm choosing to incorporate in my work, specifically about Black girls and little children of color, to be afforded that innocence that they're often not afforded in real life often. So I think my style comes from reading a lot and writing a lot and drawing a lot and figuring out what it is I like, and kind of mixing things together that like I never got to see as a kid. So I posted some drawings a few months ago, and everyone just kept saying, oh, these look like Madeline. These look like Madeline. And I was like, sure, of course I'm inspired by Ludwig Bemelmans, but also I'm interested in the idea of what does a sweet character look like, and it's a mixture of different elements of things from my childhood and characters I like, but also the style that I have, and it's a pool of different elements.
Okay. Well, that question came from Laura Telfer. We have another one. This one is from Rockwell Barton. Is it easier to draw your stories or other authors?
They both pose their own challenges. you know, I never think it's easy. I think they're both hard. Maybe when I'm working on my own books, I know exactly what I want. And so I don't have to, I don't know. Maybe I don't spend as much time trying to figure it out. I kind of have an idea going in, but it's still always a challenge when, it's not being executed in the exact way that you hoped for. But it's just like, I think of it like a different, it's kind of like a different job. Trying to translate something that's going on in my brain versus trying to expand on a story that's on a page. I'm going to show you guys one last thing. In this book that I had to draw so many stars, I tried to make things simple for myself. So I made some custom brushes. So when we see me do it like that, you can see they're kind of like ball of light stars. And so I did this so that I could fill up entire pages. And that was just a way to provide that consistency. I made a couple of different versions. Often when I'm working on a book, I make some custom brushes for that book. And so it's always really fun to be able to throw those stars on there and suddenly it's just magical. So it's no wonder that it feels like movie magic and it just comes to life. So I'm just going to finish this up and call it done. Just going to erase some of these stars so that feels like some are closer to us and some are farther away. And I'm going to call that one done. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm happy to do some rapid fire questions because I know we're almost out of time.
Okay, here's another one that is not there, but
Okay.
you expressed earlier that you said the color and lighting tells a story. And I was amazed at looking at the photos, the pictures that you were able to share. Would you expand on that when you say the color and lighting actually tells a story?
Well, we can use color to express different moods or different tones, right? So we have warm colors and we have cool colors. Cool colors might often evoke, calm or sadness. I mean, there's a spectrum there. And then warm colors might evoke like happiness, joy, but also sometimes anger or rage. And so we can use color to expand on what's happening in the scene. And use it as a quick visual way to let the viewer know what's happening or how we should feel. And in the lighting, for me, it helps show movement and things that are happening. So in the case of my drawing with this star, the drawing that I just did, we can tell there is something happening. What's happening? There's a light off camera, off screen, right? And we're reaching in a particular movement. So it draws your eye towards something that's happening. So it can be as simple as that. But I like to think about it a lot like making a movie in thinking about what's happening next, what's happening in the frame, and using each of these spreads in the book as sort of a snapshot of what's happening in the in the movie that's going on in my head.
I think it is a movie that's going on inside your head. Apparently, yes. Well, that was absolutely amazing. You are an amazing illustrator. And I want to thank you on the behalf of the Six Bridges Book Festival for your presentation today.
Thank you so
much. And
much.
I want to encourage everyone to go out and get a copy of Hello Star. I have mine. And I hope that one day you'll come to Arkansas and I'll get a chance to let you autograph it for me.
That would be great. I will revel in the day. We can travel again and do book events in person.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching. If you still have more questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. You can reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram or something.